Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. If you've watched some of my previous vlogs, you will know that I have had issues recently loading Dalco into my trailer. So that brings us to today's video, where I have some help from a guy called Damien McNickle Horsemanship. He's come into my yard today to help me try and load Dalco into my trailer. He's come very, very highly recommended, and I'm really hopeful that he will be able to help us overcome these issues. I don't really know where they've come from or what's upsetting Dalco and why he's so reluctant to load now, because I've never had an issue in the past. He's always just walked on really easily, and it hasn't mattered what mode of transport he's in either. He's always happily loaded into a trailer, a horse box, a van conversion. It's not mattered. But yeah, recently he's been very reluctant, so he will happily walk up the ramp, and then it kind of stops there. So I don't always have somebody with me to pop a lunch line around him, and I'm really reluctant to keep doing that. I don't want to have to do that all the time. I'd really like to get to a point where I can manage him and load him on my own, and also for him to be really happy and comfortable traveling as well. That's ultimately the main goal. So yeah, I thought I'd bring you along with me today and show you exactly what we get up to and how we do it. So when Damien arrived, we actually started Dalco off in the arena and Damien took the reins. So here, he's just going through some groundwork patterns with him in a rope halter in the arena where it's nice and safe. And he's getting Dalco to move away from the pressure and trying to create that personal space and that boundary so that everybody's safe, nobody gets flattened, and so that Dalco understands what it is that we're asking of him before we try and pop him on the box. So here he's just moving the hind leg, doing some rein backs, moving the shoulders, making sure that everybody understands what it is that we're asking before we try and do the next step. The next stage of this was to introduce the stick and the flag. So this is just a plain schooling whip, 100cm schooling whip with a flag on the end, and Dalco actually took to this really well. I thought that he would be quite spooky, but he was really good. So this is just kind of an extension of Damien's arm, and the flag is on the end purely just to create some energy if and when we need it. So once we're happy, it was then time to start the loading process. So we head outside into the car park, and you can see in this first clip that Damien is applying some pressure onto the rope halter and Dalco's like, So then we give him a tap with the stick. So this is just to create some energy and to get him moving because he was just planting his feet. And we want him to go forward. So anything other than forward is the wrong answer. So you've got to imagine down from the ramp, there is invisible lines like a road, and we've got to stay in that lane. So we've got to try and keep Dalco straight. That's what Damien is explaining here. So the use of the whip is that we can tap either side of his shoulder depending on which way he's drifting or falling out to try and correct him and keep him straight, and then also use the flag on the end to create a bit of energy as well as the pressure that's applied on the halter to get him to step forwards. And as soon as he steps forwards and walks on, we drop the pressure. So we would move the stick, put it behind us, disengage it, and release the pressure on the halter so that he can rest. And he very quickly learned that that was the right answer, that was what we were looking for. And after this initial session where he did step back just now, he actually didn't really do it again. He learned super quickly that the answer was to walk on. So you can see again here, apply the pressure, create the energy, tap the shoulder, he walks on, and then we disengage and he has a little rest. So we just kept doing that, and then we walked up and sort of down the ramp, and that was enough of a question. And then once he was really happy going up and down the ramp, we then started to ask him to walk inside. Again, we ask him to take another step, and you can see here that he drifts over to the right, and we kind of lose him through his right shoulder. So Damien there just swaps the whip into the other side, creates a bit of energy just to move him back and keep him straight and say, no, that was wrong. And then when he moves back over and he answers that question, he has a little rest. And then again, we ask him to walk on, just with rope halter pressure this time, no whip, and he stepped forward. So then again, he gets a rest. So it was just like really repetitive, repeating these exercises. Apply the pressure, he walks on, we rest. Apply the pressure, he walks on, we rest. If he doesn't walk on, we apply more pressure until he walks forward. And yeah, he picked it up so quickly. He learnt it and understood it within like the first few minutes, which made it so much easier for us. So you can see it's literally just one step at a time, just building his confidence, building that rapport. When we ask, he responds. And he goes up and down the ramp a couple of times. Damien explained that it was good to kind of do this and not force them up all in one go, because then that's when they kind of tend to panic and feel like contained. So we let him walk up to the top of the ramp, and then he just nicely asked him to rein back and to walk out, so that Dalco learnt that he wasn't trapped in there and that there was a way out. The question wasn't at this point to load, it was to respect what we're asking and to walk on when we ask him to walk on. So it was just kind of building that trust and rapport at this point. And you can see here, look, he moves out to the side, so energy with the whip. No, that was wrong, we get him straight again. And he did also explain that even though we're now further back than where we were, we started on the ramp and now we're 2 or 3 steps away from the ramp, Damien explained that that was actually okay, because again, the answer that we're looking for is forwards and straight. So even if he were to run 150 meters backwards, as soon as he made 1 step forward, that was the reward, even if we were further back than where we started, if you see what I mean, because that's the building blocks, those are the foundations that we're looking for. Now we are asking Dalco to actually come on board and enter the box. And something that I thought was really interesting here was, because the horses are on the ramp but their heads are inside the trailer, when you apply the pressure, they naturally lift their head and want to step backwards, and that can cause them to obviously bang their head. So Damien explained that when we get to this section, that we also now should reward a change in posture as well as the step forward. So you can see here, he asked him to walk on, Dalco's head came up, but then he actually lowered it. So that was where we disengaged. He didn't take the step forward, but because he lowered his head and he changed his posture, that was the reward. So that hopefully now we teach Dalco that we don't want his head to go up, we want him to stay low and relaxed, but also to walk on. So it's quite a lot to remember, but I thought that was really useful, because the amount of times I have asked Dalco to walk on, he throws his head up and he has banged his head. He's done it on the stable door before, he's done it on the trailer roof. So yeah, I thought that was really, really useful and good to know. And he's in. So when he did go in, He was a little bit antsy and he was pawing a little bit and was a bit stressy. So we just kind of left him there, and as soon as he was happy and settled, that's when we asked him to reverse off. So Dalco does also get quite stressed when coming off the box. So my trailer has a right hand front ramp. So when we load him on the right hand side, as you would normally travel a single horse and a double trailer, that turn to come off the front ramp is incredibly tight. So he occasionally will catch his hip and then he kind of rushes off and he gets all in a panic. So what we're actually doing is just asking him to come off backwards, and he did that really nicely, and I don't know if that's because that's what we've been doing throughout this whole session, so he finds it a lot easier. But again, Damien just said, like, if that's what he's happiest doing, then do that, don't overcomplicate it. So we will just be asking him to go on and to come off using the rear ramp from now on, because that's ultimately what he's happy doing, so why do anything else? And here we're just asking him again. He hesitates on the ramp. This is classic Dalco, this is what he always does, and then a bit of pressure, tap on the shoulder, and he's straight on. This time he was happier as well, stood there was less pawing, he was less aggy, he stood with all 4 feet on the ground. So we just waited a few minutes, let him get used to it in there, make sure he's nice and calm, he's not wanting to get off, he's not reversing himself out. And then we just gently ask him to rein back and to come back out on the ramp. And you can see how calmly he comes off here. He's super chill, no dramas. What a good boy. So after Dalco's been on the trailer a couple of times and we know that he's happy to load and happy to stand in there quietly, we then start going back through the groundwork patterns again on the floor. So this is kind of to show Dalco that if you're on the ground, you're at work, and if you're on the trailer, you can rest. So this will hopefully then make Dalco associate the trailer as a positive thing. When he's on there, he's relaxing, he's resting. When he's not on there, he's put to work. So hopefully he will then kind of choose to load. So you will see here, we've done the groundwork patterns. Damien then represents him to the trailer, and he walks straight on. So then it was time for me to have a go. So we walk up to the box and he's like, no thank you, Mum. So I just give him a little tap with the stick on his left shoulder, because if he's going to duck out, he will always duck out that side. And he just walked straight up. Super happy, super chill. I did have a little treat in my pocket, so we got a little treat. And then I was just kind of shouting to Damien, like, when do I ask him to come out? He's just stood in here like a rock. So he said just leave him as long as I felt was necessary. And then when he was really happy, ask him to come out. So he was really licky and chewy, which obviously is such a good sign. So I kind of waited for him to stop licking and chewing. And then I just asked him to back up using the methods that I'd learned from my groundwork sessions with Jodie, by using the shh sound and the pressure on the rope and asking him to go back. And then we have another go. And here Damien is just explaining to me how important it is for good preparation. So if he starts to veer off left or right, if I can feel that he's a little bit backwards and I need a bit more forwards momentum or pressure, try and get all that sorted before we present to the box. So do all that stuff now. So that's where I just gave him a little check with the rope, like, are you with me? And then, yeah, straight on, no hesitation, no bother. And I think that is actually because I was a bit more aware of Dalco and I was better prepared. So yeah, absolutely amazing. Completely over the moon with this. Like, this lesson was so expensive and I'd been putting off doing it because it was so much money, and I kept thinking, like, oh, you know, he's not that bad, he's not particularly problematic, he is just very reluctant and unwilling to walk on. But My God, I am so glad that I actually bit the bullet and did this loading session, because I think we're one and done. Damien was absolutely amazing as well. Like, I absolutely cannot fault him and would highly recommend him if you have got a problem horse that you're struggling to load. But hopefully this video may help you as well. If it does, please let me know in the comments, or if you've got any other tips and tricks that I can try, I am open to suggestions. But I really hope that you enjoyed today's video. I was absolutely over the moon with Dalco once again. And thank you so much for watching, guys, and I will see you soon.